back. This is Buddhist Books Podcast, episode 174, Tipiṭaka, part 105, in which I will be reciting Bhikkhunivibhaṅga Nissaggiya 11, 12, and maybe 13. We'll see how it goes. I hope everyone is doing well today. I'd like to welcome our special guest, Ratnasambhava. Ratnasambhava is one of the 5 Dhyani Buddhas, or wisdom Buddhas. And Ratna, if I'm not mistaken, means jewel, but it also refers to the spiritual jewel or state of mind which comes from ritual work, from temple work. So, welcome. It's nice to have him here. You might have seen him before over here somewhere under the window, since his place is the south, and that's south behind me, east, north, and this is west. So you're looking at me from sort of the northwest and looking southeast, if you were interested. All right, well, if this is your first time seeing me, you may wish to click here and start at the beginning of the Tipiṭaka recitals. So, even though some people might be watching these in order, so you might hear me repeat a few things, I'll try to say it in a different way this time. For people who are maybe peripherally or kind of like surface level familiar with Buddhism, might have noticed, it's odd. These Zen Buddhists over here are very different from these Tibetan Buddhists over here. And they seem to have a different emphasis. Maybe this Buddhism, that Buddhism, the Nam Myoho Renge Kyo chanting, Nichiren Buddhists, and so on. What we're reading is what all of these forms have in common. And some of the more, magical, mystical, mythological stories you might hear, where you go, that seems like it has an interesting moral, but I'm not sure if I believe it. This is sort of the opposite of that, and it's the oldest, so it's kind of the most fun. And kind of, from a certain perspective, in a Lord of the Rings kind of sense, it's the least interesting for maybe someone who's wanting something more like a Marvel movie, like sort of a fantastic tale. This is the fantastic tale of one nun taking another nun's bowl or robe, and what Lord Buddha, what rule was established to make sure that these sorts of things don't happen in the future as much, or when they do, they're dealt with properly. You're lucky I'm practicing ahimsa, little bug. Anyway, so this is 2,600 years ago. This is the rules that were established in the original little group that became all the various forms of Buddhism. So that's what we're doing today. And in the future, we will be, after we finish the Tipiṭaka, which is going to take a while. We're on book 3, and this is Tipiṭaka 105. So we're going to be up into at least 1,000 by the time, or probably higher than that, by the time we finish the Tipiṭaka. There's also Tipiṭaka down here on the second shelf. And then we'll get into some early Mahayana before we get into more maroon books. Those are like the commentaries of Buddhaghosa and other 5th century Common Era Burmese, masters who explained the Tipiṭaka. But before we get to that explanation, so these guys came after there were already these early Mahayana sutras in circulation. So we're going to go in order. First, we're going to read the rules. Then we're going to read the early Mahayana scriptures. Then we're going to read the commentaries of Theravadan Buddhists who were aware of Mahayana scriptures. And this would have been 1,1200 years after these original rules were written. So I'm going in order by century. If that's something that interests you, if you want to go on this journey with me through thick and thin, through fun and boring, and funny and tragic, then please do feel free to click subscribe down below, and I look forward to going on the journey with you. All right, I will go ahead and get to the reading now. This is Nissaggiya, or Forfeiture, 11. At one time, the Enlightened One, the Lord, was staying at Savatthi in the Jeta Grove in Anathapindika's monastery. Now at that time, the nun Tulananda, who, since we did the Tipiṭaka Rogues Gallery episode in Tipiṭaka Part 100, has been represented by the wicked stepmother in Cinderella. The nun Tulananda was very learned. She was a repeater. She was wise. She was skilled in giving Dhamma talk. They mentioned that last time. You know who else is a repeater? Whoever wrote this. Not the translator, I mean the original. Then King Pasenadi of Kosala. Let's give him a cartoon character, shall we? I don't know who that's going to be. Future editor Edward is going to decide and maybe put him here somewhere beside Tulananda. So I look forward to finding out who that is. Anyway, just for the people who aren't familiar with all like 80s or 70s or 90s children's pop culture, editor Edward, could you let us know who that is?
It's King Triton from The Little Mermaid. But while I have your attention, earlier in the intro, when I had said that we're going to read all the old rules and then the Mahayana Sutras, I was speaking quickly. What I meant was we're going to read the whole Tipiṭaka, including the rules, the teachings, and then the Mahayana Sutras.
All right, thank you. Good choice, I assume. King Pasenadi of Kosala, having in the cold weather put on a costly woolen garment, approached the nun Tulananda. Having greeted the nun Tulananda, he sat down at a respectful distance. As he was sitting down at a respectful distance, the nun Tulananda roused 3 dots. So hopefully you're a long-time listener and you memorized episodes from a long time ago, because Miss Horner, the translator, is not going to tell us what she roused. No, she taught Dhamma. Can you hear the rain? Anyway, she taught him, and he was very excited, and she was teaching and going on about the Dharma. And it gladdened King Pasenadi of Kosala with Dhamma talk, right? Then King Pasenadi of Kosala, having been aroused, mentally, spiritually, nothing weird, 3 dots, gladdened with Dhamma talk by the nun Tulananda, spoke thus to the nun Tulananda, quote, "Do let me know, lady, what would be of use, parentheses, to you, end parentheses, end quote." Now, the widow once posed that exact question to the Venerable Udayin, and we might remember, some of us might remember what his response was. Let's hope that she doesn't say the same thing. Let's find out what she says. What will be of use to you, Tulananda? Quote, "If, sire, you are desirous of giving, parentheses, something, end parentheses, to me, give me this woolen garment." All right, end quote. There's an old adage in cinema that, you don't see a gun in a drawer early in the movie, unless later in the movie that gun is going to be used. So he talked a lot about the very nice woolen garment he was wearing. So I should have known. Honestly, I did know, but I thought I'd mention the Udayin thing just for fun. Did I say Upananda? I meant Udayin. I hope I didn't say Upananda. Then King Pasanetti of Kosala, having given the woolen garment to the nun Tulananda, having risen from his seat, having greeted the nun Tulananda, departed, keeping his right side towards her. Yeah, already people are going to look down upon and criticize. I think it's because it's a fancy woolen garment that's not a robe, right? It's like a decorative or extra thing to wear. All right. I mean, it'd be chaos if all the monks and nuns in the world were wearing like baseball caps and extra things and saris on top of it. Anyway. Yes. People looked down upon, criticized, spread it about, saying, quote, "These nuns have great desires. They are not contented. How can they ask the king for a woolen garment?" End quote. Nuns heard these people who, three dots, spread it about, saying, quote, "How can the lady Tulananda ask the king for a woolen garment?" End quote. Three dots, quote. So it got back to Lord Buddha, and Lord Buddha called the monks together, gave reason to talk, and then afterward he asked them, "Is it true, monks, that the nun Tulananda asked the king for a woolen garment?" End quote, quote, "It is true, Lord." End quote. The enlightened one, the Lord, rebuked them, saying, quote, "How, monks, can the nun Tulananda ask the king for a woolen garment? It is not, monks, for pleasing those who are not, parentheses, yet, and parentheses, pleased, three dots, this rule of training. If a nun is bargaining for a heavy cloth, she may bargain for one parentheses worth and parentheses at most 4 bronzes, in quotes. If she should bargain for one parentheses worth and parentheses more than that, there is an offense of expiation involving forfeiture. Interesting that rule was established after this story, seeing as she did not bargain, but let's see, what's the footnote? Okay, so a bronze, we assume, is a kind of coin that is worth 4 kahapanas. You remember they were going to give Upananda a kahapana for meat, so this is worth 4 meat meals. All right. A heavy cloth means whatever is a cloth for the cold weather. Is bargaining for means is asking for. Oh. Well, then maybe Miss Horner should have used a different word rather than bargaining to translate that Pali word, since it does not mean bargaining. All right. She may bargain for 1 parentheses worth, end parentheses, at most 4 parentheses bronzes, end parentheses, 4 bronzes. So that's 16 kahapanas. It's still pretty pricey. Worth 16 meals? I mean, I don't know how much meat was. It's hard to compare. Anyway, if she should bargain for 1 parentheses worth and parentheses more than that, means if she asks for 1 parentheses worth and parentheses more than that, in the request there is an offense of wrongdoing. It is to be forfeited on acquisition. It should be forfeited to an order or to a group or to one nun, and thus, monks, should it be forfeited. Quote within quotes, ladies, this heavy cloth, parentheses, worth and parentheses, at most more than 4 bronzes, bargained for by me, is to be forfeited. I forfeit it to the order, end quote within quotes, 3 dots. Quote, 3 dots. The order should give back 3 dots. Let them give back 3 dots. I will give back this parentheses, heavy cloth, end parentheses, to the lady, end quote. I think the quotes got a little confused there, but it's okay. So how does one determine if a woolen cloth is worth 16 kahapanas or not? You go around the town to all the clothing experts and say, how much would you say this is worth? Have it appraised, and then take the average of what everybody says, and if it's 15, then you're okay, and if it's 17, it's whatever. It's good enough. If she thinks that it is parentheses worth and parentheses more when it is parentheses worth and parentheses more than 4 bronzes, parentheses and parentheses bargains for it, there is an offense of expiation involving forfeiture. If she is in doubt as to whether it is parentheses worth and parentheses more than 4 bronzes, 3 dots. If she thinks that it is parentheses worth and parentheses less when it is parentheses worth and parentheses more than 4 bronzes, parentheses and parentheses bargains for it, there is an offense of expiation involving forfeiture. Doesn't matter if you think it's worth less. If it's worth more, you got to give it back or give it to the order. If she thinks that it is parentheses worth and parentheses more when it is parentheses worth and parentheses less than 4 bronzes, there is an offensive wrongdoing. So if she's like, I'm going to go ahead and take this 20 kahapana valued woolen cloth, but it turns out it's worth only 12, well, it's a wrongdoing because she thought she was doing something wrong, right? If she is in doubt as to whether it is parentheses worth and parentheses less than 4 bronzes, there's an offensive wrongdoing. If she thinks that it is parentheses worth and parentheses less, when it is parentheses worth and parentheses less than 4 bronzes, there is no offense. There is no offense if she bargains for 1 parentheses worth and parentheses at most 4 bronzes. If she bargains for 1 parentheses worth and parentheses at most less than 4 bronzes, if they belong to relations, if they are offered, if it is for another, if it is by means of her own property, if she bargains for something of small value while parentheses the other person and parentheses desires to bargain for something costly, if she is mad, if she is the first wrongdoer. Now, this is interesting because if I recall correctly, the rule for monks was you're not supposed to ask for a robe. You're not supposed to ask for a robe for cloth making.
Strike that. Reverse it.
It's supposed to be donated. You don't say, hey, give me that robe making or robe cloth, right? So the nuns are allowed to bargain for things for as long as they're not worth more than a certain amount. Okay, that's interesting. That's very interesting. One thing that occurred to me, I think, after a full year of reading these rules, when it says the first wrongdoer at the end of most of these, I think that I've been misunderstanding that. Rather than saying that this nun or monk has never done a wrongdoing before, and this is their first wrongdoing, so you get away with 1 wrongdoing, I think it actually is referring to the person who did the thing that got the rule established. So the first person, so Tulananda in this case, I mean, the reason why she's still around is because though she's broken all these rules, she was the first wrongdoer in every case. She was the first person to ask a king for a woolen cloth. And so she's not to be punished. But anyone who does it after her is to be punished, right? Okay. Forfeiture. Nissaggiya. 12. At one time, the enlightened one, the Lord, was staying at Savatthi in the Jeta Grove in Anathapindika's monastery. Now, at that time, the nun Tulananda, she's back, was very learned, 3 dots, parentheses, CXI, 1, instead of in the cold weather, read in the hot weather, instead of woolen garment, read linen garment. End parentheses, 3 dots, quote, 3 dots. This rule of training, if a nun is bargaining for a light cloth, she may bargain for 1 parentheses worth, end parentheses, at most 2.5 bronzes. If she should bargain for 1 parentheses worth, end parentheses, more than that, there is an offense of expiation involving forfeiture, end quote. So 1 worth 10 kahapanas. Math. Usually pretty good at math. Anyway, light cloth means whatever is a cloth for the hot weather. Is bargaining for means, is asking for. She may bargain for 1 parentheses worth, end parentheses, at most 2.5 bronzes means. She may bargain for 1 worth 10 kahapanas. I nailed it. If she should bargain for 1 parentheses worth, end parentheses, more than that means 3 dots, parentheses, CXI2, read a light cloth, parentheses, within parentheses, worth, end parentheses, within parentheses, at most more than 2.5 bronzes, more than 2.5 bronzes, less than 2.5 bronzes, end parentheses. 3 dots. There is no offense. There is no offense if she bargains for 1 parentheses worth, end parentheses, at most 2.5 bronzes. If she bargains for 1 parentheses worth, end parentheses, at most less than 2.5 bronzes, 3 dots. If she is the first wrongdoer. Recited, ladies, are the 30 rules for offenses of expiation involving forfeiture. All right. Concerning them, I ask the ladies, I hope that you are quite pure in this matter. A second time I ask, I hope that you are quite pure in this matter. And a third time I ask, I hope that you are quite pure in this matter. The ladies are quite pure in this matter, therefore they are silent. Thus do I understand this. Told are the 30 offenses of expiation involving forfeiture. Well, so Nissaggiya 12 was the last of the Nissaggiyas. So at the beginning, when I said we're going to read 11, 12, and probably 13, I did not know that. And so it turns out we're just going to read 11 and 12 because, I don't like to do one section and then start a new section in the middle of an episode. We'll start the next episode with the next section, and I didn't peek ahead, so I don't know what it's called. But it's probably similar to whatever came after Nissaggiya in the rules for monks. Also, there are 30 rules contained in 12 Nissaggiya. So I'll have to re-listen to the Nissaggiya episodes and see if I notice where the 30 are. So maybe in those finer, like if she does this but not this, and if she does that but not this. I don't know, because it seems like 12 was just one rule, right? Well, all right. So basically, you're not supposed to ask for things that are more expensive. You're not supposed to ask for nice things, but it's okay if somebody gives it to you. So if you are wearing a 50 kahapana woolen cloak to keep cool in the wintertime, and somebody says, sister, what on earth are you wearing? And she's like, the rich guy down the street, he just gave it to me. You didn't ask for it? No? Oh, all right. Ta-ta then. Have fun. All right, yeah. What are you going to do with it later? I don't know. Maybe trade it for medicine. Then that's fine. Just not to ask for it. All right. So fine-tuning the, what's considered, manners, good manners and good behavior for the monks and nuns. Establishing these. So see what I mean? What I mentioned at the beginning is these are very kind of like down to earth, and maybe for some folk like not interesting. It's like the equivalent of reading laws, reading like a legal, because that's what it is. It's a very, very early. In fact, I think it's the earliest, what they say in the East, quote unquote, So I guess they have earlier like laws written down in the West, quote unquote. I mean, where's Hammurabi? Is he in the West or the East? Middle East? So yeah, I mean, for monks and nuns, the monastic laws, this is definitely the earliest thing that is written down from anywhere in this part of the world. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, then you are. If you're not, then how come you're still watching? There was sort of a troll who came out and told me to go back to my own country and focus on the teachings of my own culture. Wow. And you know what? The guy who said that did not come from either Lumbini or Bihar. So maybe you should stop being Buddhist. I'm only kidding. I would never say that because that would be as absurd as what he said to me, right? My father was born in China and was Buddhist and raised me Buddhist. And so despite the color of my skin, by the way, in, I think it was Pakitiya, one of the Pakitiya rules where Lord Buddha, it's on stereotyping. It's the one with the goats named Metiya and Daba the Malian, where the guys say, hey, we're going to name these goats Metiya and Daba the Malian so we can say we saw them doing the wild thing, And then Lord Buddha says, you cannot accuse someone because they have the same name as someone else. You cannot accuse someone because they have the same skin color as someone else. He actually says that. Or the same family name, or the same height, or the same this, or the same that. He goes on and on with a long list, basically saying no stereotyping. If you see a man with a particular kind of skin tone like this, then, you can't say based on other people of the same skin tone, prejudge them and say, go back to America, put on a suit and tie and talk about Jesus. Okay. That was never me. That was never my father. So it's absurd for you to tell me to do that. So, blessings to you if you're watching. All right. I hope everybody enjoyed today's recital, and I look forward to the next one. And remember, if you're a Theravadan nun, not to ask for, what's this time of year? It's kind of monsoon season, so it's neither hot nor freezing cold. So you don't need to worry about these rules until peak winter. But when it comes, if you're going to ask someone for a woolen cloth, make sure it's not worth more than 16 kahapanas. I wonder what that means with inflation and all. Comment below. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close with the prayer that my father and I greeted every morning with as I was growing up. To the north and to the south, to the east and to the west, to the spirits of light among us, and to the spirits below, we send out our reverent love and compassion. May all beings be happy. May all beings be serene. May all beings be in peace. Until next time.